All right, just sitting down editing some videos and thinking about this call the other day. Man, was it tough. It was basically like a weeping willow tree was planted right on top of a sewer line, and the roots busted through the plastic, and I guess has been going on for years because the roots were thicker than my jetter hose. My jetter hose is a half-inch internal diameter, what they call ID, even thicker OD, outside diameter. So these are some huge roots. I jetted on this thing for about an hour and barely made any progress at all. And of course, right in the middle of jetting, the line bursts. Had to call Pertec out. So here's that story. It started to snow, and I had to run and go get my kids from school, which always happens to me on jetting calls on certain days when I'm going to get my kids. Worst case scenario happens, you know how that goes. So this one will be a dig. It'll be an excavation because the roots are too bad. So when you cut roots out, you need to be able to remove them or flush them down. If they're big, long, 5-10 foot long tree branches, essentially, you got to dig that out because there's nowhere to go with those branches. You got to pull them out. That's the only ethical thing to do. You can't put those in the main. They'll block up neighbors' lines and stuff like that. So you got to get them out of the line. Got to get them out of the pipe. So we're going to go out there and dig this thing up and do a repair. The whole purpose we were out there for was to prep this for patch, which you need the line to be completely clear of those roots to push a patch through there too, which we can't do. We can't ensure that we'll be able to get those branches out. So this is a rough one, man. Enjoy. So the jetter kicked off kind of violently. Not sure why. There's a lot of water up here. Got a burst in our hose up there. Golly. This is about the 4th or 5th time this has happened. I will say, if there's one thing about this jetter that's a flawed design, it is this portion right here. I'll tell you, if you're thinking of buying an American jetter, this is the one thing you need to be aware of, among other things. But, and all jetters have quirks, don't get me wrong. We're dealing with 5,000 psi, we're dealing with moving parts, but this is kind of just a bad, this is a cheap reel. This would be my guess is that the reel is real cheap. It's not the best in the world. It takes forever to get this thing off. There it is. As usual. So what happens is this stuff right here starts to come off, and it'll rub a hole in the protective sleeve like that, and then it vibrates against the hose like that. So another call to Pertec. So there's a few things I can do on my end to prepare for Pertec to show up. Pertec's like a hose repair company. See if I can sit you right here while I work. Let me see. All right, you hang out right there. First thing I'm gonna do, this protective sheathing is worn, so I'm gonna cut this basically slide it up so that those areas where there are holes are no longer there, because they're not providing any protection. In fact, they could be making the problem worse. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Making progress. That's the goal in life. Just keep stepping forward, right? Keep going forward. Make progress. It rubs against that metal. Puts a hole in it, just rubs it, and it comes all the way through. Look at the layers on that thing. That's 3 layers. Comes all the way through. Let's see if I can get this on camera. See that? And then it can rub like that. So we're gonna get this off of here, get that ready for Pertec. Another tech tip of the day. This is a swivel connection from Pertec. This did not come with a swivel connection, so always get a swivel connection. Otherwise, this hose is connected to this, and the only way to get it off is basically to wrap this entire hose around and around and around as you are unscrewing it, versus having a swivel connection like this means the hose can stay in place while you turn that. So that's another fatal flaw of that reel. I don't know where that reel is from, but we got to figure this out. This is the killer right here. Happens every 3 or 4 months. It's come off, and I've put glue under here, like I've put silicone under here trying to keep it on, and it just keeps coming off, keeps coming off. So I got to figure something out. Maybe epoxy. Maybe my next step will be epoxy, and then I don't know. I was like, maybe it should go all the way up the sides. It's a big opening, and that hose, I don't know if that hose like has any lateral movement. Probably does. Like when you're winding it up, I'm sure it's rubbing on the sides. You can see right there where it's laying over it. I'm sure it does bang against the sides, so it should probably have, quite frankly, protective coating or protective covering all over this. But this is how it came. See, it just comes right off. Nothing to it. That's one of the things about this profession, this trade, is that you got to be willing to turn a wrench. So if you are thinking about becoming a drain cleaner or thinking about getting into any kind of plumbing, you've got to be able to work on stuff. It's just part of the deal. It's like stuff's gonna break anytime you're dealing with high pressure equipment and mechanical stuff. Like anytime there's a moving part involved, it's got a timeline on it. So we'll wait for Pertec. Apparently they're gonna be here in a couple hours. We'll get that thing crimped, new crimp put on, cut it back again for like the 4th time. It's like probably, I bought that thing in February of 24, a year ago, and I've had to have Pertec do this specific repair. This is probably the 4th time. That's $1,000 of hose repairs. That's about what that hose would cost just to buy brand new all over again. So keep that in mind. every few months. Little stuff like that's going to happen. If it's not the repair being made there, let me show you another thing that happens to jetter hose that's real frustrating. It's very, very easy to do this. Oh, you know what? It's in the pipe. Never mind. We're not going to be able to see it because it's in the pipe, but it crimps. Basically, you'll come around a corner and the hose will bend, and that thermoplastic covering will basically get ruined because it's never the same. It always has that little bend in it, and then it's like real easy to kink in that spot, and it just keeps kinking and kinking and kinking. And the fabric, that woven fabric that's underneath that thermoplastic covering, that gets damaged as well, and it gets weak over time, and then eventually it'll burst. So you have a midline burst, that's when you've got to replace the whole hose. If you've got it up here close to the edges or up down there near the nozzle, not a big deal, but midline hose is ruined. You need a 250 foot hose to really reach where you need to reach and do the job. Residentially, I don't know anything about, industrial stuff. Golly, you probably have to have 1,000 feet of hose in some of those places or better. But residentially in the United States, at least in the Midwest, you need 250, and that pretty much covers anything and everything. All right, man, we'll get this thing fixed. We'll get back at it. Stuff happens. Glad you were there on site to see it. It's been a good learning lesson. I don't know if we're going to get this one open, though. Like, those roots are pretty bad. We might be digging this one. So, all right, guys. And before you guys come at me with, well, why don't you use your own crimper and put on your own tips on your hoses? Why don't you just do it yourself? Because they make dyes, and you can do your own hoses in the field. Because it's all Chinese, man. It's all, you're talking about 5,000 PSI, and you're going to do a hand crimp on a 5,000 PSI hose yourself in the field? No way. You should see the pneumatic crimp that they use to repair that PurTech uses to repair that hose. It's unbelievably strong. It's way stronger than you ever get with a dye with your hands on a dye machine, on a dye crimper from China, because all this stuff is from China, man. Everything's made by the lowest bidder overseas. It's all cheap. 5,000 PSI? You want to risk your life with a nozzle on the end of a 5,000 PSI hose? Don't even think about it. No way.